Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching Nile TV International and The Breakfast Show, and marking the Sudanese Independence Day, the 65th Independence Day. And since ancient times, Sudan has been an area of interaction between the cultural traditions of Africa and those of the Mediterranean world. And we have more details in the following report.
Sudan is a country in northeast Africa. It is bordered by Egypt to the north, Libya to the northwest, Chad to the west, and the Central African Republic to the southwest. The area of Sudan represents more than 8% of the African continent and almost 2% of the world's total land area. Sudan's history goes back to the Pharaonic period. In the 19th century, the entirety of Sudan was conquered by the Mohamed Ali dynasty, and in the 20th century saw the growth of Sudanese nationalism, and in 1953, Britain granted Sudan self-government. Ancient times, the Sudan region has been an area of interaction between the cultural traditions of Africa and those of the Mediterranean world. Northern Sudan is rich in culture and steeped in a fascinating past that makes it a unique and enchanting travel destination. The early history of Nubia in the far north of Sudan, the Nile with its access to gold, copper, ivory, ebony, and much else from Central and Eastern Africa. There's a lot of beauty to uncover in Sudan, with Sahara Desert and Great Nile covering most of its length. The Republic of Sudan, with its colorful past and interesting cultural elements, is attracting visitors from all over the world. Not every country in the world has such interesting natural landmarks as well as historic past like Sudan. North of Sudan is an adventure across endless desert, along the beautiful Nile, and into thousands of years of ancient Egyptian and Nubian history.
نحن لدينا مصير مشترك.
مصر تسلمت الرئاسة الدورية للاتحاد الإفريقي لعام 2019 وتتطلع كعادتها دوما للتعبير عن شواغل الشعوب الإفريقية الشقيقة الرامية لتحقيق الاستقرار والتقدم ودفع عجلة التنمية قدما. إذا كنتم ترغبون في تغيير وجه القارة الأفريقية، فالاتحاد الإفريقي كقيادة تستطيع أن تعمل وتبذل بشكل مركزي لمشروع عملاق لبناء بنية أساسية على مستوى القارة. أنا أتصور أن الأمن والاستقرار استثمار. إذا لم تستقر هذه القارة والأمن فيها بمعدلاته عالية، هذا الأمر سينعكس بالسلب علينا كلنا.
Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching The Breakfast Show live on Nile TV International. It's now time for our first topic of discussion for today. And as we noted earlier in our introduction, we're going to be talking about the 65th Independence Day, 65th anniversary, rather, for the Independence Day of Sudan. The Sudanese Independence Day is of utmost importance to all the Sudanese people. And of course, Egypt stands in solidarity with the Sudanese people, the people of Sudan, and they're marking their Independence Day. And to shed more light on this topic, we're most delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Mohamed Shazly, former Assistant Foreign Minister. A very good morning, Ambassador, and Happy New Year's to you.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you and to all our viewers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. Ambassador Shazly, first of all, if you can shed more light on the Sudanese Independence Day, the 65th anniversary, which is going to be marked by the Sudanese people today.
First of all, my felicitations to the Sudanese people on this occasion. And let me point out something that is not realized by many people, that 1956 was the year of independence both for Sudan and for Egypt. In the agreement between Egypt and the United Kingdom after the revolution of 1952, in 1954 we signed an agreement that stipulates that Egypt is going to get its complete independence, because until that time there were still British forces in Egypt, and it stipulated that within I think 20 months all the British forces will withdraw. And the other point was that to give the Sudan the right of independence, of free determination by a referendum to determine its future. Because as you know, in 1922, with the nominal independence of Egypt from Britain, there were 4 exceptions. One of them was Sudan. So to end all this haggling over Sudan, it was decided that the Sudanese people will decide and determine their own future. In 1956, the Sudanese people chose independence. Egypt respected that and stood in solidarity with Sudan from that moment on.
Mr. Ambassador, President Fattah al-Sisi has asserted that Egypt and Sudan have historic and binding relations, and also not to mention the joint cultural and social aspects spanning for many, many years. Can you please elaborate on that, sir?
Egypt and Sudan are tied together by ties of geography. They have a common border, joined by history. You can also take into consideration that at a certain time there was a Sudanese pharaoh, Pharaoh Shashtaq, who was Sudanese, who ruled over both Egypt and Sudan. They are economically bound by the River Nile and by strong trade relations. Intermarriages between Egyptians and Sudanese are amongst the most prevalent between any two countries. Take into consideration that 2 of Egypt's presidents, both President Mohamed and President Anwar Sadat, had Sudanese mothers. So this shows you, of course, the issue of security through the borders, and this time where have to, both of us, secure our borders. Becomes a very important aspect. At this time when there is much instability in Ethiopia and refugees are streaming in from Ethiopia into Sudan, over 50,000 have flown into Sudan since the beginning of the recent developments. All of these issues shows you that the relations between Egypt and Sudan, who are both sharing the River Nile and are members of the River Nile basin, at a time when the waters of the Nile are a very critical issue at this moment. All of this shows you the importance of the relations between Egypt and Sudan.
Mr. Ambassador, also in light of what you have said, allow me to ask you about the fields of cooperation between Egypt and Sudan, and how can both sides boost this cooperation or move it forward?
There are lots of fields of cooperation. I personally find that the most important is building the infrastructure of cooperation. You know, cooperation does not come out of a vacuum. You have to have a background and a backbone for the cooperation. One of the most important factors is transport. You can't have trade, you can't have movement of people between two countries if you don't have the proper transportation infrastructure. We are now stressing the importance of the railroads binding the two countries. There have been two roads inaugurated between Egypt and Sudan, and also there are negotiations going on in the field of maritime transportation. This, I think, is a very pivotal point in cooperation. Also, food security is a very important aspect, because Sudan is endowed with a very large area of agricultural land which needs to be developed. This Sudan itself, the agricultural land in Sudan are sufficient to feed not only Egypt and Sudan, but the whole of the Arab world. Sudan has seen a very long time of conflict, and it needs to build its infrastructure. And with the experience that Egypt has, and which has demonstrated very clearly in the number of roads, tunnels, new towns, this shows the ability of Egypt to help Sudan in this field. So I think there are ample opportunities for cooperation between the two countries. All we need is the political will, and I think this has demonstrated that it is present on both sides of the border.
Finally, Mr. Ambassador, from your point of view, how can both sides boost the trade ties and positively impact the economies of the two countries?
As I told you, one of the most important aspects of trade is transport. You cannot have trade without transport. I'll give you an example. Egypt imports beef from Argentina and from Australia and many faraway countries, and is not able to import from Sudan, which is just across the border, because you don't have the proper means of transportation. If you look at the map of the European Union, you will see a spider web of means of transportation, railroads, roads, ferries, airlines. This helped the European Union achieve its economic unit. So I think transport is the most important factor in creating trade between countries.
Ambassador, finally, a message that you would like to send on this important occasion.
As I said before, my felicitations to the Sudanese people. I hope they will consolidate their unity and create stability in their country and receive the open hand of Egypt that is presented to them, so that together we can build a better future for both our countries.
Ambassador Mohamed Shazly, former Assistant Foreign Minister, really appreciate your insight and your presence with us on the Breakfast Show live on Nile TV International, and we wish you a happy New Year. Dear viewers, now we move on to a quick break and then we'll be back to resume the Breakfast Show live on Nile TV International.